the medium. That's how desperate they were, forgetting that his wife, Crookes' wife, took part in a great many of his experiments.
Mm. How did he continue to pursue this with all vigor right up until the end, or did he back off from it after taking such a pounding for so many years?
Well, no, he published his findings in 1874, then went on to other things. But right up until his dying day in 1919, he categorically stated that he sticks by every single word that he has published, that he backs it to the hilt. He never backed off from it, ever.
We have received, Michael, many photographs of what we commonly call ectoplasm, for lack of a better description. It tends to look rather like cigarette smoke, and these usually nighttime photographs flash and so forth. Ectoplasm, I guess, can take on different textures, different densities, depending upon the medium and so forth.
Yeah, I think to explain to people why we have to have this, what they tell us they do, they have to make a temporary sort of spacesuit to teleport somebody in. They can't push somebody into our etheric world, proving they've survived death, without first of all setting up a sort of spacesuit for them to be teleported into.
All right.
So what the scientists in the etheric world do, and it's them who do it, not us. All we can do is observe and report. We haven't got the technology to do this. But what they do, they withdraw this protons, neutrons, and electrons from the medium, and no doubt other people in the room as well, and make a temporary sort of body so they can push the life force of the etheric person into it. So that's what they did with Katie King. They made a temporary body of protons, neutrons, and electrons.
And you can see, I think, by extension, what killed Helen Duncan. She was, at that moment, of course, extremely vulnerable, had given up a tremendous amount of her literal atomic substance.
Yeah.
And then these people broke in. And
that's right. And she died of internal hemorrhaging when the protons, neutrons, and electrons rushed back into her body. So you've got to be terribly careful. So the safety of the medium must be number one priority in all our experiments. And every scientist taking part in these experiments will be scientists who have got nothing to lose from it, and scientists who have already committed themselves, like Professor Peter Wadhams and Professor Josephson, who will be in charge of the experiments. We won't be letting any of the professional wreckers near the medium.
No, as it should be. All right, we'll pause and come back. Oh, and by the way, Peter Wadhams will be a guest here on the 24th to talk about global warming. He is, of course, without question, one of the world's most eminent authorities on the entire issue of global warming and the catastrophe it is visiting on the planet. Back in just a few minutes with Michael Roll. Okay, and we're back. Another just amazing paragraph from Sir William Crookes' letter that I want to read you. This is amazing. You got to remember, this is Victorian England, right? Formality and all the rest of it. I pass on, this is Sir William Crookes, I pass on now to a séance held last night at Hackney. Katie never appeared to greater perfection, and for nearly 2 hours she walked about the room, conversing familiarly with those present. On several occasions she took my arm while walking, and the impression conveyed to my mind that it was a living woman by my side, instead of a visitor from the other world. That impression was so strong that the temptation to repeat a recent celebration and celebrated experiment became almost irresistible. Feeling, however, that if I had not a spirit, I had at all events at least a lady close to me, I asked her for permission to clasp her in my arms, so as to be able to verify the interesting observations which a bold experimentalist has recently, somewhat verbosely, recorded. Permission was graciously given, and I accordingly did, well, as any gentleman would do under the circumstances. End quote. That's an amazing little paragraph.
Well, that's an extraordinary thing, because the same thing happened at the Rita Gould experiment. We had a beautiful young lady, an opera singer, materializing. She died as an old lady, but she was coming back here as a 20-year-old in her prime.
Mm-hmm.
And she was the medium's grandmother, Rita Gould's grandmother. She was a famous opera singer in her
really?
day.
Oh.
And we were allowed to touch her like Sir William Crookes did as well. And all the men that took part in this experiment, we all fell in love with Laura. And when I met Alan Cleaver, I said, keep your eyes off Laura. He said, I saw her first. So it's really, you get that wonderful feeling.
Now, when here in Crookes' letter he says, conversing familiarly with those present. A familiar sentence, but I don't understand. Is the voice the same? Michael, did you hear the voice resonating the same way? Was it just as rich, or was it more diaphanous or vaporous?
No, it's exactly the same as our voices now that people are listening to. This is what's so wonderful about a materialization experiment. They come back with exactly the same voices they had on Earth. And at one of the experiments, we had a Dutch lady had come over to witness the phenomena, and her dead son, who died in the army, fully materialized, and they conversed in fluent Dutch to each other. Of course, that's in my reports there as well.
She must have...
and the opera singer who materializes sings beautiful operatic duets to us. So she catches hold of your hand and sings a lovely operatic aria to you.
When were you involved in the Rita Gould materializations?
This is 1983, my experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody who's been there had the same thing happen to them.
Right.
He sang an aria to everybody who went there.
Were these
exactly the same voices they had on Earth, you see?
Were these materializations in? Let me rephrase that. How dark was the room that they appeared in?
Well, it's got to be in pitch black. So Helen Duncan did her experiments in red light, and Sir William Crookes was allowed fluorescent phosphorus lamps into his experiments.
Mm-hmm.
But ever since Helen Duncan was killed in 1956, they've had to refine the method of doing this to try and protect the medium. Helen Duncan told me this. She said, ever since I died in 1956, the scientists over here have been refining the ectoplasm so that if our defenses should be breached, like they were with me, the ectoplasm is now so fine it shouldn't damage the medium too much if it rushes back into her body. And to do that now, we have to operate in pitch black, no red lights anymore. But it doesn't matter in the slightest, because as you know, Jeff, we've now got all the sophisticated equipment to film perfectly in the dark. Mm-hmm. Infrared cameras, we've got night vision goggles, so it's nothing, it doesn't matter in the slightest how dark it is for our scientific experiments. But to get over the problem, when I first went there with the Rita Gould experiment, what we do, we coat everything in luminous paint. So all the physical objects in the room are covered in a luminous paint, and then we bring luminous clothes in, and when the people fully materialize, they put on the hat and jacket and boots, so we can see them walking about the room, and we can also feel them and touch them. So we got over that problem.
Now this, of course, is all subatomic energy being loaned out from the materialization medium. And my question is, back to the density, physical density of the materialization. It varies, but they can be as dense as regular people. Are they also as warm as regular
Absolutely.
people.
When I was allowed to touch the people, it was no different to touching anybody on earth. Exactly the same as we are. And they're wearing clothes like us as well. That's what's so mind-boggling about the whole thing. They're able to reproduce their old physical bodies and to make them young or old.
Well, it's like working with a paint canvas of unlimited potential when they have this stream
they have
of energy.
different laws of physics. When this little boy materialized, every time Rita Gould gave a demonstration, a 9-year-old boy called Russell Byrne materialized, and he's been reunited with his parents on something like 100 repeatable experiments. And he said to me, Mike, as my parents lost me when I was 9, that's how I'm coming back to meet them. He says, but normally we walk around here in our prime as sort of 25-year-olds, so they can change their etheric bodies. Nice to think I'm going to get my rugby-playing body back, isn't it?
Rugby again? That's a tough sport.
Don't forget, when Professor Peter Wadhams comes on, he's also one of the world's foremost experts on the work of Sir William Crookes.
Mm-hmm.
If you get a moment, ask him about that as well.
Oh, we've been, thanks to you and his kindness, he's joined us in the past. And,
yes.
We have discovered some amazing things through his work.
But he really is gemmed up on Crookes far more than I am.
Well. Okay, time for a little break here. We'll do that. Come right back. Again, click on Michael Roll's name and do go to his website. There is a ton of wonderful material there. The Campaign for Philosophical Freedom is the name of it. And I'm Jeff Rense. Be right back. Okay, and when you read the articles on Michael Roll's website, you'll find a lot of text from Sir William Crookes' writings in the Spiritualist magazine or publication back in the 1870s. Amazing reading.
I think, Jeff,
yes,
we ought to, before we go, let your listeners know why we have to work with a medium. There's my article there, we can't see microbes without a microscope. As we're dealing with the invisible part of the universe,
yes,
nobody doubts that microbes exist because of the instrument called a microscope. So we can see that the reality exists in the invisible. And also we can't see the invisible signals hitting our television aerials, but we know they exist because of the medium in our front room, our television set.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we have to work with a human medium if we're going to contact people in the invisible part of the universe, because the human mind and brain are a far more sophisticated instrument than anything invented by human beings. So that's the reason. There's no mystery why we have to work with a go-between, a medium, if we're going to contact people. They're only acting as an instrument, same as a microscope or a television set.
Understand.
A lot of people don't understand why we've got to use mediums, but there's very good scientific reason for using them.
Of course. If I were to try to guess, I wouldn't know where to begin. So let me ask you, how many mediums are there? Competent mediums. They don't have to be full-blown materialization mediums, but how many are there out there per 100,000, per 500,000, per million population? Do you have any guesstimate?
Difficult, but the extraordinary thing is that we all have this mediumistic gift. But in some, it's much more